When Cristiano Ronaldo signed for Al Nassr back in the winter of 2022, the sports world basically went into an absolute meltdown. I mean, critics were everywhere, loudly declaring that his legacy was over. Football purists were genuinely devastated, framing this whole historic transfer as just a tragic, purely money-driven end to an unmatched sporting career. But today, we make the financial case that this was actually his most strategically intelligent decision, and the numbers, not opinions, are our evidence. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to dive deep into the specific economics behind Ronaldo's move to Saudi Arabia. We're calling it footballnomics, and we're going to show exactly why this was, hands down, an absolute financial masterclass. Okay, so let's just get right into it with this massive number, $200 million. When that January 2023 announcement dropped, this headline figure alone literally broke the internet. To put that into perspective for a second, that number completely dwarfs the largest contracts we see in the NBA, the NFL, or really anywhere else in global sports. It was instantly the biggest contract in the history of football. But you know what? As massive as that number is on its own, it really only tells half the story of his actual financial strategy here. So stick with me, because at minute 7 of this explainer, we calculate what Ronaldo would have earned if he'd stayed in Europe during these 2 years, and I promise you, the comparison makes the Saudi decision look incredibly obvious. Now, we do have to address the immediate backlash, right? Critics everywhere immediately claimed his legacy was over and dismissed the transfer as a sad, desperate end to his sporting career. Pundits on basically every major sports network called it a pure retirement move. The whole narrative was that one of the greatest footballers to ever step on a pitch, a guy with 5 Ballon d'Or awards, 5 Champions League titles, over 900 career goals, was just cashing out and throwing away his competitive drive. And look, it's completely understandable why fans were so emotional about this. When you've watched a legend dominate Europe for 2 decades, seeing him leave, well, it feels like the definitive end of an era. But today, we need to strip away all that raw emotion. We are presenting the hard evidence proving this was actually the most strategically intelligent financial decision of his life. To really understand this, we have to look through the lens of footballnomics, because at this elite level, the 1% of the 1%, athletes aren't just players anymore, they're multinational corporations. We're not here to argue about football romance, loyalty, or legacy on the pitch. We're looking strictly at the math and the business mechanics. This was a highly calculated business move by an athlete who understands his market worth better than anyone else on the planet. And this fundamental difference in economics is exactly what we're going to break down for you. We're looking at the traditional European football economy versus the wildly ambitious emerging Saudi sports project. See, in Europe, player salaries are strictly constrained. They're tied to club revenue, broadcasting rights, and some really intense financial fair play regulations. European clubs have to operate as traditional businesses, trying to balance the books. But in contrast, the Saudi project operates on an entirely different scale. It's backed by national wealth with a specific mandate to rapidly build global visibility. Keep this stark economic contrast in mind, because as we map out what Europe could actually offer him versus the reality of Saudi Arabia, the logic is just impossible to ignore. To really grasp the strategy here, we've got to look closely at the reality of the market in December 2022. So following his messy, highly publicized mutual termination with Manchester United in November, Ronaldo entered free agency. And here is the uncomfortable truth that a lot of sports commentators deliberately ignore. There were simply no serious offers from elite European clubs at his required wage demands. None. His agent, Jorge Mendes, reportedly shopped him around to the biggest names in the sport. We're talking heavyweights like Chelsea, Atletico Madrid, even Bayern Munich. But those massive wage demands, they were an insurmountable stumbling block. The top Champions League sides just weren't lining up to sign him at the premium price his brand demanded. Which brings us to the crucial point. The genuine choice for a nearly 38-year-old athlete wasn't between taking hundreds of millions in Saudi Arabia or competing for the Champions League trophy with Real Madrid. That's a myth. The real choice was between Saudi Arabia and a drastically smaller deal at a mid-tier club elsewhere, or potentially nothing at all. European clubs looked at a 37-year-old commanding upwards of $500,000 a week and saw a massive financial and sporting risk that could completely derail their wage structure. He wasn't turning down a massive elite European offer because, well, that offer just did not exist. So let's actually break down this colossal $200 million package, because this is where the business genius really starts to reveal itself. Out of that $200 million, only about $75 million was actually his base salary for playing football. The vast majority of the money, well over $100 million annually, came from leveraging his brand through massive commercial deals and image rights. Image rights basically mean Al Nassr can monetize Ronaldo's name, face, and signature globally. They can sell endless merchandise, lock in ultra-premium global sponsorships, and broadcast his likeness everywhere. So when people argue that no footballer is worth $200 million a year just to kick a ball, they're completely missing the point of what was actually being purchased here. Because Al Nassr wasn't just buying a striker to score goals. Fascinatingly enough, academic researchers who study sports marketing actually classify CR7 not just as an athlete, but as a multifaceted global media enterprise. The club was acquiring a massive commercial vehicle. Ronaldo has successfully evolved into a brand encompassing fashion, fitness, lifestyle, hotels, and an unprecedented social influence with over 1 billion followers across his platforms. 1 billion! That reach translates to tangible, immense leverage. When you sign Cristiano Ronaldo, you instantly become the most talked about club in the world. You literally shift the entire center of gravity in global sports media directly to your doorstep. But the salary isn't even the most financially valuable part of the arrangement. Let's move to a crucial factor that often gets completely swept under the rug: taxation. Saudi Arabia levies 0 personal income tax on its residents. 0. Now let's compare that to the brutal reality of Europe and tax brackets. In top European leagues, especially in countries like Spain or the UK, top-tier tax rates effectively cut an earner's income right in half. Top earners are often paying 45 to 50% in taxes. So getting to keep 100% of his staggering earnings makes his Saudi deal equivalent to a roughly $460 million pre-tax salary in Europe. Let that sink in. It's a level of wealth accumulation that is mathematically impossible in Western football leagues. And to truly grasp his hidden commercial value, we've got to look at the massive commercial agreement layered right on top of his club duties, his role as a Saudi tourism ambassador. What does this actually involve? Well, it means using his unparalleled reach to promote the country's luxury resorts, cultural events, and modernization efforts. And the data on this is wild. It shows that Saudi Arabia's official Red Sea tourism account would have needed 80 years of normal posting to match the reach and engagement of just one single Ronaldo promotional post. 80 years of marketing consolidated into one click on his phone. Sovereign wealth funds use athletes for geopolitical branding, and they're willing to pay a premium that traditional European football clubs simply cannot match. All right, fulfilling our promise from the start, here is the reveal. Let's do the 2-year earnings comparison. Let's assume he swallowed his pride and somehow secured a really generous offer from a mid-tier European club paying him roughly $15 million a year net. Over 2 years, that generous European offer would have netted him about $30 million after taxes. Now let's compare that to the Saudi reality. Over those same 2 years, he clears over $400 million completely tax-free. I really want to emphasize the math here. This isn't just a small bump in pay. It's roughly a 10x difference. For every single dollar he could have made staying in Europe, he made $10 in Saudi Arabia. It's not even close. Now, to explain how he justified this massive multiplier, we can look at marketing frameworks like Kafur's brand identity prism. It's a tool that breaks down a brand's commercial power into 6 dimensions. But we can keep it super simple. Ronaldo masterfully capitalized on his reflection, meaning how his billions of fans want to see themselves in him. Al Nassr didn't just buy a guy who kicks a ball, they bought his aura. They purchased his representation of relentless ambition, extreme glamour, and an unmatched work ethic. He positioned himself as a global lifestyle icon, which made his brand entirely distinct and highly premium in an overcrowded sports market. That aspirational connection, that is exactly what justifies a multi-hundred-million-dollar investment. Strategically, this whole decision came down to a fundamental, unavoidable truth of professional sports. His physical body, despite a legendary daily routine of extreme fitness, strict nutrition, and specialized recovery that kept him at his peak way longer than almost anyone in history, was ultimately a depreciating asset at age 37 going on 38. I mean, you simply cannot outrun time. However, his CR7 brand was a peaking, appreciating global asset. Acknowledging that he had to step away from the Champions League, he made a calculated pivot to protect his future. He brilliantly traded his depreciating physical asset for the monetization of his peaking brand asset, securing the largest guaranteed cash position possible before his playing window permanently closed. And the absolute proof of this genius calculation arrived when he signed an even bigger extension, taking him to 2025 for a reported $245 million a year. But the ROI goes even deeper than his salary. As part of his broader integration into the Saudi project, he transitioned from a mere employee to a stakeholder, mirroring the brilliant equity moves made by athletes like Lionel Messi or LeBron James. By doing this, he officially crossed the billion-dollar net worth mark, becoming the very first active footballer billionaire in history. He maximized his financial return at the exact perfect moment, leveraging his immense value when it was at its absolute zenith.
So, looking strictly at this comprehensive financial audit and these undeniable, staggering numbers, I want to leave you with this final thought. Given the numbers, do you think Ronaldo made the right financial decision, even if it cost him European football prestige? Was this actually the smartest move of his entire career? Let that sink in, and thank you so much for joining me on this